Hi, my name's Johnny, and today we are doing a jazz bass shootout. Got my good friend, it's Matt Barker. How you doing?
I'm very well, sir. How are you?
Very good. Yes, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for coming down to coming up to glorious Somerset to film with me today. You've brought some insane jazz basses with you today. I think the majority are yours, aren't they?
Yeah, I brought 4, you brought 2.
Nice up. Beating me already.
Yeah, I've got a jazz bass problem at the minute.
I was going to say, now, for context, you like thick necks, right?
Yeah.
And so jazz bass, traditionally, doesn't feel like it'd be up your alley. But...
No, I've been on a quest to find the jazz bass that kind of does it all for me. And I've settled now on 2 that are very different, but kind of cover all my jazz bass needs at the moment. So yeah, I've been on a little bit of a quest recently. I'm going to get rid of 2. I'm going to keep 2. But yeah, traditionally, I've always been a P-bass guy. So it's a weird kind of path that I've been taken down recently, but I've been enjoying it.
Part of that tone journey, finding what you want. Well, I think that today, this is going to be the one for you, The journey stops here.
My old mate, Glary.
So we're just going to be playing each of these through a pretty clean sounding amp. We've got the Ashdown little bastard here going through a 2x10. What you're hearing is the DI out, and it's got cab sim on there as well.
Yeah, it's got 2 notes, torpedo software and stuff, magic stuff going on inside. So we've got a little kind of like analog cab sim replicator that we can adjust. So we've just got it on like a fairly neutral setting at the minute. But yeah, that also informs the DI coming out. So you are hearing the same cab sim essentially as what we're playing through. Obviously, we also have a cab as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not hearing the cab in the room, but we just want it to be as clean as possible for you guys at home to compare these. We're going to start at the bottom end of the spectrum. We're going all the way from like 80 quid up to over 2 grand. So we've got a whole range of price points.
At what point is it diminishing returns? And are there other factors that you should take into consideration when you're looking to spend like kind of big money, like residual resale values and things like that? So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm looking forward to it and just looking forward to hearing how different they sound as we kind of progress.
Absolutely. Let's start things off with the amazing Glary. Is JB, isn't it? Or
yeah,
they're jazz bass, basically. This is as stripped down and as basic as you get, 80 quid new, very, affordable looking and feeling in some places, and you can kind of tell in some elements where they have saved the cost with tuners, with the kind of fretboard materials, and the weight of it is like, hold that.
Oh, this thing is ridiculous. You can just throw it around with one hand. It just feels like it's made of nothing at all, which in some ways is great. If you're doing a long set, sometimes it's nice to have a light bass. That's typically something that I would look for if I'm doing a long set, and it's something that I'm very kind of conscious of when I'm doing like 2-hour gigs and stuff like that. So actually, in terms of feel on a strap, I imagine this is probably one of the comfier ones in the room, because some of them can be real boat anchors with jazz bass.
Yeah, especially with the vintage ones. Let's hear what this one sounds like. I'm going to try and do similar riff across all of them, keeping it nice and simple. This is everything on tone up full. Here we go.
So, I mean, it's
totally passable,
It sounds... this is what we were talking about last time. For 80 quid, or whatever they come in at, they're certainly sub 100. These, out of the box, you've not done any setup as far as I know.
Nothing.
They just kind of work. And we're in this golden age of being able to buy super cheap instruments. Like, it wasn't long ago that you couldn't buy hardware for £80. You'd be looking at 50, 60 quid for a set of tuners.
Yeah.
So, like... we're in this real golden age where like mass manufacturing and like, being able to buy things from like kind of like Far Eastern origin is just making things actually quite accessible to people who are looking to start out and don't want to spend, 400 or 500 quid on a starter kit. This bass surprises me every time we hear it, to be honest, because I always think that I'm going to dislike it. And then as soon as I see it, I'm like, if I was like, saying to a student or something, like, I'd be like, just get one of these or get a secondhand Squire or something. But one of these will do you just fine. You can upgrade parts as you go along. You can upgrade the machine edge. You can upgrade the electronics if that's something you're looking to do. But honestly, out of the box, these are absolutely fine as is.
It's great feeling as well. The neck is kind of, it feels unfinished. It's a satin, and that's, a plus point for many people. But it feels cheap in some areas, but it's not it's not detrimental to it at all. You know, you can kind of tell where they've saved money, but at the same time, there's no complaints. Have a go.
Thank you very much. If I just roll this to the neck, it does a fairly passable P bass impression. It's like, you know, like that's got that kind of like mid-rangey burp that a P bass does, and then with everything on, it's just like.
How sensitive is this?
That's one of the things you don't get with cheaper kind of like micro pots. It's almost like you get at the very beginning of the action of the knob, you get a little bit of a change, and then it kind of doesn't do much after that. There is some difference, but it's not particularly sensitive, I wouldn't say. And that is the kind of stuff where you would probably be looking to upgrade some of the stuff. But the market for this instrument is going to be beginners, realistically, isn't it? And I think as a gateway instrument into bass, certainly for like learning, you know, like the basics of like... like that kind of, you know...
That's advanced to me. So.
But you know what I mean? Like when you're just learning like the mechanics of the instrument, essentially, you're probably not actually going to be at a stage when you require that from it. Does everything that you needed to do for £80.
Would you say it's your favourite bass you've tried so far?
It's definitely my favourite that I've tried in the last 10 minutes.
Wow. You heard it here. So now we've got a bit of a hybrid beast here. You might recognise this body here because it is a Squire Classic Vibe 60s jazz bass.
So I went to Project Music in Exeter recently because I decided I was going to build myself up a 60s spacing jazz, which is what this is. The electronics and the bridge are still stock, and then I've changed everything else, so I'll just put this to the camera. But this one has a 1971 US jazz bass neck on it. It's a maple neck, rosewood board. Yeah, this is a bit of a hybrid, a bit of a Bitzer. But for all intents and purposes, what you're going to be hearing in terms of electronics and stuff like that is very much classic vibe. So we've decided to include this one here rather than slightly further up, and just is a really fun bass to play. And in terms of dynamics tonally, you'll probably notice that this is where the increase in spending is probably starting to pay off in terms of electronics. These are cloth wired pickups. The tone capacitor is a bit higher quality, so it has a bit more kind of operating range. And so should we get some tones?
Just some tones, man.
Just some finger style.
Way hotter output, isn't it?
Way more output. I would say dynamically, it sounds a lot richer as well. You hear way more going on with it. That was just everything on. And then if you hear this, like... certainly in the room, you hear a lot more tonal variance with the tone pot.
I would say it's just way more full in every frequency range that it's working with there, isn't it?
And I think as well, like you hear that when I was just hitting the harmonics then, they were so bell-like. They came out really easily, very bright, and they were kind of focused, and you were getting a lot of kind of overtones coming out of it, which you just don't quite get with the Glary. Again, this isn't going to be an issue for you if this is your first bass. These aren't going to be things that you're actively seeking, I wouldn't imagine, but certainly, you know, these ones are coming in at the Classic Vibe. I paid $3, $4, $5 for it brand new. So, you know, they're not like absolute beginner instruments, but they're certainly within that. Probably your first or second bass.
Yeah.
You could probably get a good Christmas present if you were getting a Classic Vibe.
And this would last you so long. You know, like it's going to take, it will cover you until you want something maybe like Japanese or American, I would say. Like unless you want that kind of jump up, it's going to see you through many years, I'd say.
Absolutely. Like I know people, pro players who are gigging classic vibes. If I didn't have this 71 neck at home, I would have been absolutely happy with the classic vibe neck as well. The fretwork on it was glorious. The neck finish was immaculate. It was just really well put together bass.
Definitely worth trying in the shops with these. I always recommend because they can be quite different. I've had them before or people online will say, oh, this one had really bad fret edges. And then I've been very lucky. A lot of the ones that I've had have been really, really great second-hand ones as well. You had tried several of these in the shop, right? That were the same.
Yeah, I tried a few, and I think I sent you a photo when I was doing it. Like the ones I was trying were all Daphne blue, and like there was color variances, wasn't there, between them? And I was just like, how do these look so different, but they're supposed to be the same color? Yeah. And like all of them played well, but some just had, like this one, for example, was the best sounding one. And like you said, it's just got so much more output than the other ones. I don't know, like just, you know, you luck out on the occasional instrument. And that's why it's always really beneficial to try one, because one might just resonate with you a little bit more. They've almost made the Mexi standard range redundant.
Yeah.
Because I actually think they're a better instrument and you're paying probably 200 quid less.
When I went to buy a P bass from PMT in Bristol one time, I A-B'd a classic vibe and the Fender player. And I went in knowing I'm going to come out with the Fender player. Nope. Came out with the classic vibe because I enjoyed it so much more. May I?
Of course.
Okay, if you've been on my channel before, you will recognize this one here. This is my Fujigen J Standard, so it's their version of a jazz bass. Fujigen is the name of the factory that basically make Japanese Fenders, or one of the factories that have made them throughout the years. And then they release their own branded things, a bit like Quartz does in Indonesia under FGN. They're still going now. This one is an older model. It's done loads of gigs with me. And yeah, it's great. Same old riff on the pick. Strange. I think it's almost more like compressed sounding out of the gate. It feels more consistent to me, but then not so rich and a bit less scooped almost, I feel like.
I was going to say the same thing. It feels like there's a bit more low end in this one, but it feels like everything was kind of like, it had almost like it was, again, similar in terms of output to the classic vibe Bitzer, but it felt like it had a bit more low end in it, and it felt like everything, it wasn't as spiky in terms of the output. It felt like, yeah, I guess compression is a great way of saying it. It just felt a bit more linear and balanced, rather than it just like trying to blow your face off kind of.
Yeah. Great for slap, I think, that, because it's quite tight sounding.
I will say my playing's terrible. It's like freezing in here if my hands are so cold. As soon as you take off that neck as well, it gets very bright and very scoopy. That does it like. What I would say is that the neck definitely feels a lot glossier than the two we've had previously.
Yeah.
Very rounded front to back. Feels a bit like a D profile to me. I imagine it's probably labeled as a C, but it feels like it's got a bit of shoulder to it compared to the other two. Fretwork, really nice on this. No sharp edges, feels great as you'd expect from Fujigen because, they've just been kind of on top of their game really for the last probably 40 years, something like that.
It's always a go-to. I love Japanese made stuff. Not everything Japanese made is amazing, but the Fujigen and Tokai factory stuff, it's just so nice. I think this is a late 90s.
Oh, really?
My memory, yes.
Okay. I mean, that would make sense. The pickguard looks like it's aged a little bit now and things like that.
That's an aftermarket bit.
I'm talking bollocks. Great, and again, a lot more bass response than you've heard previously,
but not too much that it's like no definition.
It's not muddy at all. Like it's very, it just feels a lot more dynamically balanced than the other two, but with more of a nod toward the low end, I would say, rather than like a super bright, stanky jazz, which some of them can sound a bit thin.
Yeah,
We're back,
baby, and we're staying in the world of Japan now, but changing it up ever so slightly because we've got a classic all black Aerodyne. Right?
Yeah, so this is a first year Fender Japan, so it's crafted in Japan as opposed to made in Japan. It's Fender crafted in Japan Aerodyne DLX, which stands just for deluxe, which means it's like bound and stuff like that. And these are kind of a bit of a cult classic in the jazz bass world. They're PJ 60 spacing on the bridge, so you've got a bit more of that kind of like obviously precision bass, mids and low end kind of character rather than like a jazz bass single coil. These are a split maple neck, rosewood board. Obviously this one's got a matching headstock, and as mentioned, these are made in Japan. So new now, these are the equivalent is about 1,200 quid. When these came out, they were about the same price as the Fujigen. They were about £1,000 give or take when you bought them. And these are just a really nice, lightweight deluxe jazz bass. So again, super lightweight because it's basswood.
And Aerodyne is far too cool to not be included in this shootout. I absolutely love these. I remember seeing the photos when they launched. I think, was it like 2003?
Yeah,
early 2000s.
2003, yeah.
And they're just super flat and they just look like a streamlined jazz bass, taking off the bits you don't need, but keeping it all killer, no filler.
And it's that tuxedo black with the binding and stuff. It just looks so classy, doesn't it? Like that really.
And you've added blocks, right?
So yeah, these are just, it wasn't even me, it was the previous owner just put these blocks on there. So they are, I think they're just adhesive, to be honest. I don't think they're routed in, but yeah, they look fine. They're not I wouldn't have put them on if they weren't already on there just 'cause I'm lazy. But yeah, they're fine. I think it actually quite suits the black kind of build as well. Again, it's just like gives a bit of pop, on that all black. But yeah, obviously these have got slightly different shaped knobs as well. So these have got like all the hardware on these is Goto. So it's Goto bridge, Goto tuners, and then they are witch's hat like knobs, and they're like just in like kind of like a pewter color, the same as the rest.
I think they look like the Monopoly Man hat.
Yes, or a pilgrim's hat.
Yes, that's the perfect one.
They look like a pilgrim's hat. What I'll do first is I'll play everything on. You'll probably notice there's a bit of a different flavour with this because of that P bass, because
we both had that stank straight away. We're like, I mean, that's how we should measure the success of these. How much our face.
Yeah.
It just does that mid-range thing that a jazz bass, traditionally more scooped sounding instrument that this pickup provides. So it's just different flavour, isn't it? Sounds great.
I really enjoy PJ. I think it does just give you that like slight boost, and it gives you a little bit more bottom end as well. Like if I just solo that, it's like. Jazz bass, unfortunately, just cannot do that.
No.
It can do an approximation, which is fine, and in a mix, often you don't hear that much variance, but certainly, like, you know, I notice it more in like a live setting.
Yeah.
When you've got that split, it just absolutely demolishes the like it just cuts through so well.
I think that's the best sounding with the tone off, honestly.
Oh, it sounds outrageous. And if I start just solo to the bridge, just this is one that I don't play very often, but whenever I'm doing pedal demos, this is the one that I gravitate towards because I feel like it just sounds like everyone's going to know. It's going to be a really familiar sound to the ear, and so it allows the pedal to be like the main center of attention.
Yeah.
What I want to use is like my signature model, but no one knows what that sounds like. So I'm just like,
going to use this wall bass, the Lembic for this pedal demo.
Literally. I'll just do that. Let's hand it over.
There we go. Nice.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one.
Cool.
So this rad boy here is what?
This is a Bitzer. Again, you're going to see a trend with me that I like to take things and ruin them. Now, I like to make mods when necessary. So I bought this with that 71 neck on it, which is now on the Classic Vibe body. And it's a mid-80s, made in Japan again, ESP custom shop body. And it would have had an ESP neck on it at some point. I bought it with that 71 neck, immediately took that off it and added this Vintera 50s Fender Precision neck. So you'll notice it's a lot wider at the nut. A typical jazz bass is 38mm at the nut. This is a monstrous, I think it's 44.5mm nut. It's really big. It's basically a 5-string neck, essentially, in terms of width.
It's like the Vintera, if you didn't know, the Vintera necks are all Specto after 50s style basses. So 50s P bass, you're thinking chunkiest the chunk.
It's chunk. It's weird because I expected it to be bigger front to back, like deeper than it is. It feels quite shallow, I think, front to back for a P bass neck compared to some that I've had, like a 50 spec one in, like, you know, the telly type P bass, like 51s and stuff, because they've got just a baseball bat of a neck. But this just turned out to be a super cool bass. When I heard it, it had rounds on it and it sounded amazing, so I immediately ruined it by putting flats on it. So it's, custom shop ESP body. It's got Schala bridge, roller bridge. It's got Schala machine heads, Schala control plate, and then I believe the pickups are still ESP. The pots and whatnot are still ESP. And then, it's this really nice, like, kind of like honey burst finish. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I'll try and get it on camera. It's a really nice rippled Japanese ash. It's called Sen ash. Quite lightweight for a jazz bass. It felt a lot lighter until I put this monster of a neck on it, which actually made a huge difference. So you feel the neck resonate a lot more because there's probably more wood and it's a bit denser. So it just feels kind of a bit snappier in some ways. But it certainly made the overall bass feel a bit heavier as well. And then I've got this one strung with labella flats as well, just to be a bit weird. Oh. So this is going to sound very different. It's 70s bridge spacing, which is very kind of consummate with a lot of what you'd get from ESP. For those of you who don't know, ESP started in, I think, the very early 80s as basically just like a custom shop where they were making like kind of like Fender clones. And then when Fender shut down the Fullerton plant in the US and moved to production to Japan for like a decade whilst they were setting up Corona, ESP also used the exact same production line. So there's some early 400 series ESPs which are Fender headstocked, and there was a lawsuit about it. So did you ever see my pink ESP 400? It's a P bass with like a PJ. So I had a pink ESP 400 series which just looks like a P bass, but I think it was PJ from memory. And that was a lawsuit one because it was made literally alongside the Fender stuff. Oh. So it had everything was like Fender like on it. It was so weird. So yeah, that was cool. But yeah, I'll give you some tones. Sounds weird, right?
It's very polite, isn't it? Wait, that's all both pickups.
That's everything on tone full. Like it sounds so PB. If I go just to neck and tone on this.
I'm really looking forward to hearing that through the DI.
Oh, it sounds terrible. It sounds terrible. In the room, it sounds really good. It sounds really bassy.
Yeah.
And then this is just bridge, everything like tone on.
It's funny going from the other jazzes to this because it's like,
And
hello? It's like I have to whisper around it.
It's a really interesting exercise in how much strings make a difference as well. Because this was
massively.
really loud before I put flats on it, and now it's quite quiet.
How much, what did we have the tone on then?
Tone's off.
Tone was off. Nice.
You want to give it a little?
I give it a little whirl. I'm going to do everything all up to remind.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how this is going to sound. Because traditionally,
I think it's because I'm really clicky.
yeah, potentially.
The eyes sound clicky anyway, don't they?
Yeah, here we go. It sounds kind of like when you're hitting it harder with a pick, yeah, like it's being choked a little
Yeah.
bit. But you know, for what it is and for what it's kind of set up to do, it's not set up for that.
No, this was basically set up for like that kind of like Motown-y, like, you know, slow.
Should we move on?
Yes.
Thank you. Holy guacamole. I think arguably the star of the show aesthetically. I nearly swore then so much that's how much I like it. This is it's an 83, is that right?
Yeah, so this is what we would call transitional spec. So, quick history lesson with Fender. They sold their company to CBS and they were working in Fullerton. In 1983, they closed down the Fullerton plant and moved production to Japan for, I think, a decade while they were setting up the Corona facility. So in that last year at Fullerton, you would often get what you'd be called a transitional spec bass. So this is, for all intents and purposes, a 1978 jazz bass. So it's got a 78 serial number, which I hope you don't steal. It's got a 3-bolt neck plate, which is different to the 4 bolts on every other bass we've had, and it has this thing called the micro tilt system, which is you put a little key in there, and it basically you can shim the neck without having to use a shim. And then you've just got like normal stuff. Oh, you've got bullet truss rod adjuster at the headstock as well, which is a bane of many people's existence. So this one has got EMGs in it, EMG-J system, so it's actually active. Which is the first active bass we've had today.
Seems blasphemous, doesn't it?
It doesn't. Like, it was a really, really kind of common mod around then, you know what I mean? Like, people were taking 70s jazz basses and just hacking them to bits. Like, you know, Marcus Miller's 70s jazz is...
You're not wrong, actually. I said that and thought, well, to be fair, like, 80s basses are like that where all that's kind of started, you know, especially active pickups rather than preamps, you know, that really started coming in. You're seeing that a lot and a lot more modern kind of sounds starting to come out. So
absolutely,
yeah, I kind of take that back. But people think vintage, active, what? You know, like
so
kind of thing.
For all intents and purposes, it's a 78 jazz bass. So as you'd expect, 70s jazz spacing. That was a CBS thing. In the 70s, they moved this back, actually to live under a cover without being able to see it. Alder body. It's got a maple neck. There's something about the Alder and then the maple neck and board and that 70s spacing and probably just the era it was made and things like that. I pick it up and I just want to go. I've got a real sentimental attachment to it because I bought it and the guy I bought it from shipped it to me in bits. And he said to me at the time, if you buy the body and the bridge, you can have the neck for free. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, this bass will never play again. And I was like, is the truss broken? He's like, nope, it'll just never play again. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted. So I spent 2 days of my life reassembling it, setting it up, putting it all back together, giving it fret polish and a level and all that jazz. It plays great now. It sounds awesome. I have such sentimental value to this. This was the first jazz bass as well that I've been able to play because I have wrist injuries, and which is why I can't usually play jazz. And this was the first one that I've ever been able to play where I've just been like, okay, I can sit down all day and play this one. Yeah. And I almost feel it's like the bass is rewarding me. The neck always needs like little adjustments because in the 70s they were very thin a lot of the time. Certainly towards the latter end of it. So like they just become like very temperamental to humidity changes and stuff like that. But you just get a real, like the neck feels so played in on this, even though it's a poly finish, but it's just had so many years of other people playing it. And also I love little bits like this where you can see on the binding where that would have been lacquered over and then someone's played it with rings and it's just taken away like bits of the finish and stuff like that.
You can see where they've played. They were loving it up here for a little bit.
Yeah, weren't they?
Let's hear it.
Yeah, let's do it. So this is everything on. Is this a slap machine? Bit of fingers there. And it sustains for a day.
It's the pops, man. That's why they like slap machine. They're really, really punchy.
Yeah.
Can I have a go?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. That was good, wasn't it? That was really good. It's very it's slammed. I mean, this is even higher than you would normally have it. So that's why it's just set up for that.
It's just all about getting that percussion, isn't it? And because it's such a spanky bass, like it really does give you that, like that treble pop.
Price wise, I mean, it's hard to say with the mods and the kind of year it is and isn't.
So I've seen original 80s, 83s actually. I've seen them start to go for about 2,300, which I think is high. I had a 78, which is currently for sale at the Bass Gallery, and that was a refin, so you couldn't see the serial on it or anything like that. That's currently for sale, refin for 2,600.
Wow.
And that was a 78. So spec-wise, basically exactly the same as this. That was a rosewood block board, but and then it had an ash body actually, but so that weighed 14 pounds, but 14.9 I think it was. But yeah, like you're gonna be looking over 2k realistically now for one of these. You probably, if you got mint one that was like a really good player, you're probably looking at like maybe 2.5 now. But for 70s jazz basses now, you're starting to look like high 2s, low 3s. I often look on Reverb at the prices of parts of basses, and like a 60s neck now will cost you like 3 or 4 grand.
Of course.
For a neck, an unloaded neck.
Crazy.
It's bonkers.
Well, that brings us to the end of this. It's tough to say a favourite, I think. They all kind of do something quite different, and we've got quite different playing styles. So I imagine our kind of answers and what we want out of them be quite different.
I have two favorites. So it goes as no surprise to anyone who's just watched this that this is probably my like ride or die out of all of them. But I have had this a lot longer than the Daphne one, which is very quickly becoming like joint favorite. Basically, both of them feel so played in and they almost feel like they have a story to tell. Like they've lived a life before I became their custodian. So I think for those reasons, those two are my favorite.
Interestingly, it's the middle price point ones that I like the most. So I'm sitting with the Fujigen and the Daphne Blue. That Daphne Blue one sounds great, especially going from the Glary to that. I was like, whoa, this is like so much better sound-wise.
And I think that takes us back to the like diminishing returns thing. Like I think up to £1,000, you start to get real noticeable differences in the quality of like hardware, the quality of electronics. The high 1,000s up to like the 2,000s and above, I think there is a level of diminishing returns, isn't there?
Now it's time for you guys to let us know which you preferred and why in the comments section down below. If you liked this or want to see more, make sure you click like and subscribe. Matt, where can people find you on the internet?
At Matt Parker Bass on Instagram, mattparkerbass.com on my website. But it's largely just Matt Parker Bass online anywhere, and hopefully I'm there. If I'm not, I'm probably just a loser.
Super. And your Tinder and Grindr and all of that is on
all of that
as well.
All of that. Matt Parker. It's just Matt Parker ass.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.